the Team Performance Podcast with Spencer Horn and Christian Napier. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Team Performance Winning Ways for Uncertain Times podcast. I'm Christian Napier, joined as always by the illustrious and celebrated Spencer Horn. Spencer, how are you?
Good, celebrated in my own mind, and good to be with you, Christian, as always. Just, we've been sitting here chatting and we're like, should we turn on the recorder? No. Sometimes we just got to talk offline, and I just love being with you. And so great to be with you today.
Well, I say celebrated because I've seen some things that you've been putting up on LinkedIn and some keynotes and things that you've been doing. And it looks like you've been receiving some really positive feedback on those and all the great work that you do. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. No, and it's really hard in these COVID times, right? And I was able to give a keynote to about 482 people, and that was exciting. And yes, got great reviews. And very, very happy about that.
Well, give us a little bit of a sense of the keynote. I mean, that's kind of difficult to do in these challenging times, right? You had to do this thing remotely, or were you able to do this in person? What was the keynote like?
No, it was right here in my studio. And so it was a 2-day professional development, associations put on these professional development days. They do them on an annual basis a lot of times. And so they're happening all over the world all the time. So different associations. And I was lucky enough to be the keynote speaker, and there were, whole host or roster of speakers. And so how I did that, I had 60 minutes, and my topic was staying relevant in the age of big data and AI, right? As you know, AI and big data are taking jobs left and right. I mean, if you've got Roland Garros. I don't know if you're a tennis fan, but you've got the French Open on right now, and AI is taking over for it. Now they're no longer having judges. It's all being done by Hawkeye and artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is hiring. They're reviewing contracts. They can diagnose medical diseases. They can create legal plans. And so we're losing jobs to COVID. And what I'm also finding is that CEOs that I talk to all across the country are struggling to hire people right now, if you can believe that. They're having a hard time finding people. Unemployment is 8.4%, which is down from the 15% it was here in the United States earlier in the year. And that is seemingly crazy, but what's happening is people are collecting unemployment. They don't want to go back to work. They're scared. And so this is actually forcing companies to implement their AI strategies sooner. I don't know if you remember, I was consulting with a company last year in Ogden, Utah called, I'm blanking. Oh my gosh, you have to do this out. But I was consulting with a company called AG Monitoring, and they have about 400 employees. And they will, in the next 2 years, as they perfect their AI system, they'll cut their employees in half. All of that work will be done by machines. And there are experts that predict that by 2025, 5 years from now, we could lose up to 50% of jobs to AI. I don't think it's going to be that high, Christian. I think it might be even, let's say it's 15%. That's double our unemployment rate right now. That could be a significant impact. But what I have found is that there are skills that no matter what, machines can't replace. And so I was talking about what those skills are for you as professionals. Whatever you have, if you develop these skills, that you will be employable in the future, even as machines start to take over our jobs. And one of the challenges, to answer your question, that I couldn't do, that I normally do live, is I like to take 6 volunteers from the audience, even during the keynote, and demonstrate the impact of effective communication. And I couldn't do that. So one of the things I did while I was in Texas last week visiting my daughter is I got 6 volunteers and I recorded them. So I did that on video, and then I inserted that in my presentation. And so that was one of the things I had to do to adapt my keynote to the virtual format.
Well, that really sounds super interesting. And not to go down on this path too much, because I know we've got a lot to talk about on our own podcast here, but I find what you're talking about fascinating. And so I want to ask, well, I guess I want to make a comment and ask a question. So the comment is that ever since the Industrial Revolution, we've had this conversation about technology replacing jobs, and we seem to find other things to do. So it didn't matter if steam engines or automated harvesting equipment, or whatever it is, or computers, whatever, robotic manufacturing, taking away manufacturing jobs. Up until COVID, we were enjoying historically low unemployment levels here in the United States, and no doubt that AI will cause an earthquake in the whole process, just like some of these other technologies have done, and maybe even more. But other things might pop up that we may not even have considered. And I'm curious to get your take on what those things might be.
So first of all, great question. And your observation is correct. There has always been fear of technology, right? The word sabotage, do you know where that comes from?
I do not.
So a sabot is a French wooden shoe. And when the Industrial Revolution hit France and you started having the looms take over the cottage industry where they would, make clothes in their homes and sell them, the looms threatened their livelihood, many of the cottage clothing makers. And so they would take their wooden shoes and throw them into the machines to break them. And so we got this word sabotage from this very instance of technology taking over jobs, right? And so there's always been this fear. And historically, every time you implement new technology, there's actually been a growth in labor, because now you have new jobs that are created to associate with running the machines or something, and the economy grows, therefore there's more opportunity, and it seems to go on and on. However, until 6 years ago, that was the case. Something has happened in the last 6 years that has changed that. And we're actually seeing a depression in working wages and unemployment for the first time in history. And what's happening is that the capability, or, Moore's Law, I don't know if you remember, Roger Moore in 1965 said that.
It was Gordon Moore.
Oh, Gordon Moore, that's right.
Roger Moore was 007.
That's right. It's Gordon Moore, that's right. He said that the number of circuits that you could have on a transistor, right, would double every 2 years, and then he increased that to 18 months. Well, what's happened is we've kind of gotten to the point where, from 5 to 10 transistors, that was not or circuits, that wasn't a transistors on a circuit. I'm getting it all confused, but that wasn't a big deal. But we went from 5 to 10 to 20 million transistors on a circuit board. That's game changing. And now we've kind of gotten to the maximum number of transistors on a circuit. We can't make them any smaller. Now what's happening is that we're increasing the power of those circuits, and now it's starting to grow exponentially. And so basically what this means is that the IQ of machines by 2025 will surpass the IQ of 90% of Americans. They're getting smarter. They're getting faster. There's nothing that they can't do. And for whatever reason, in the last 6 years, it has broken the chain of increasing our economy and jobs. And so the trend is changing. So I don't know, to answer your question, what the future will bring, but I do know that, for example, if you're a lawyer, your clients aren't going to accept a game plan from a machine. They need a lawyer to be able to present those ideas and get buy-in, right? Convicts are not going, any of us are going to accept a judgment from a machine. We need judges to be able to give you that verdict, right? Doctors can be eliminated through diagnosis and probably surgery eventually, but patients aren't going to accept those diagnoses from a machine. We need people that can actually connect and have empathy. And empathy is much bigger than really understanding other people's emotions. It's so much more than that. And so the skills that we need to be relevant in the future are the human skills, which oddly enough are the skills that we're losing at a rapid rate because of technology. We're actually giving up a lot of our human traits because of technology. Anyway, I don't know the answer, but I do know that the more human skills for the first time in history are more and more important than ever before.
Well, allow me to give you a little bit of corroborating evidence.
Okay, good.
So, as you know, I work in the area of knowledge management. If you look on a job board today, you will see that most of the positions related to knowledge management have to do with technology required to capture and curate, classify, and then distribute knowledge from one source to another. And so it's a very technology heavy thing. Traditionally, that's when people think of knowledge management, they think about SharePoint and they think about these tools that you use to collaborate in the workplace and things like this, and document repositories and where we have to store all our files and things like that. That's what people generally think of as knowledge management. Well, as you know, I've been working on this project with the International Olympic Committee, which is called Structured Interviews, where we go and we interview the heads of all the functional areas in an organizing committee over the life of that committee, which is 7 years. And collectively, we have now captured over 11,000 responses to questions that have been answered by these interview subjects. And I am now going through and conducting analyses of these. One of the topics that I just did a couple of weeks ago, or I just presented a couple of weeks ago to the knowledge management team in the IOC, was a topic of games learning. We have a question that we ask about learning in the standard questionnaire. And the question asked them about specific external resources that they found most helpful to them, which could be the IOC staff, the advisors, people from previous organizing committees, documentation found on the IOC's knowledge platform called OGK, Olympic Games Knowledge, the games reference materials like host city contracts and guides, technical manuals and things like this. So we asked them this question and we asked people to kind of respond. And so as part of this analysis, I took a look at the responses to these questions. And overwhelmingly, the responses showed that they thought that people were the most helpful resource. They mentioned the IOC staff, the advisors, people from previous organizing committees. And those were the top three responses, wasn't even close. And then the next three, or kind of the bottom three responses, were kind of the knowledge assets, the documentation, the extranet, or now the Olympic Games knowledge system that organizing committees can connect to find and research documentation. So the big takeaway from that was, from a knowledge management perspective, what we need to do is not be so focused on documents and files and these kind of things. What we have to do is create ways for people to connect with each other so they can share knowledge, and also support that or with making it easy for people to find the assets. I, as a knowledge producer, know where everything is, and I, as a knowledge consumer, know who to talk to, which is a knowledge producer that's relevant to me, who can then find that information for me and help me. So it's a very people-focused thing, and it's going exactly to where you're saying. Well, we could have AI, help us. And we see this all the time online now. There are all these kind of bots. You go to a website, you need to schedule an appointment to get your car fixed. You need to find out fix a problem that you're having with your computer or whatever it is. You always start talking to a bot. Right. Exactly. If they can't resolve the situation, then, they send you on to a live person. But I really think that as you were saying, moving forward, we need to view these things as assets that help people connect with each other. And it's really to kind of facilitate and strengthen the human interaction, because as you said, people still want that.
We need it, Christian.
And I learn best when I'm talking with another person and they're telling me their story.
Okay, so what you just said right now is super important as a human skill going forward, and that is story. Warren Buffett says that being able to tell a story is one of the most, public speaking and specifically storytelling is one of the most important skills that you can develop. Why? Because we as humans demand stories, because we need an emotional connection to the information that we're receiving. So many people in the sciences and engineering and project management are all about facts and data, but that is not what causes people to change or move or learn. It's connecting those facts to stories when something happens, that we can't explain, we create a story to understand it, right? That's what we've done for centuries and millennia, actually. So as humans, we crave emotional connection to each other and to the events that are happening around us. And that's how we learn and grow and actually absorb into our database, right? And so that can't be unless we get the matrix where we can actually download hardwired stuff and learn how to fly a helicopter with, a download. That's not going to happen until we have, until we have technology that's going to take over. Until then, it's stories. It's connecting on a human level. And that's not going to go away. And machines can't replace that.
Again, another piece of evidence for this is the increasing popularity of podcasts.
Yes.
Because basically, that's what a podcast is. It's story time. We get on here and we just start talking about our experiences and we share stories. Yeah. And it's our human inclination when we find something that makes us feel good inside to want to share it with people.
Right.
That's why we're doing this podcast, right? We have discovered things that we feel are relevant and important to us, that have an impact on our lives. And we want to turn around and share that with other people, because there's no real fun or joy in just holding it to yourself. You just you have this natural desire to kind of share those things. And there's a natural desire for people to hear those kinds of things. And so here we are doing these podcasts, and people are listening, and it's just a nice little tiny illustration of the point that you're making, which is we want this kind of connection, and stories are a great way to make this kind of connection. We might have to just change the topic of this podcast episode because we've already gone about 25 minutes down this direction, and we may want to just keep on going this way because.
Well, let's bring it home. I mean, so what else can we talk about? And I love that this is so extemporaneous today, right? I mean, we didn't have an agenda or a script when we decided what to talk about. You just asked me about my week and what I did, and then this all came about. But it is so relevant today. I mean, I just downloaded because I'm talking about this topic because I think it's relevant for people in all professions, the skills that we need to develop. And I just downloaded an article today that is reinforcing what I'm experiencing. My experience is that COVID is actually speeding up the process towards this AI implementation. And of course, big data is huge. And right now, only about maybe 10% of companies are really utilizing this, but these are the largest companies. And you have companies that like Unilever and lots of other big companies that they use AI technology to interview people, and they eliminate people just by the interview that you do on your phone. And so they're doing it much quicker. They're finding better candidates. And it's just, I mean, you have to be able to be more human in today's world. So the skills that we're losing that are going to make you more successful are making it so you don't even get the job in the first place. It's really interesting. But
it's super interesting. Super interesting. Just before you get there. So on the weekend, my wife said, "Oh, Amazon's hiring like a bunch of people, and they're giving people $1,000 bonuses to join and work in a warehouse." Well, right. I really have no desire at my age and level of physical fitness to go do that. We've talked about working at UPS earlier. UPS also hiring people, but I was curious what the process was like because I thought, frankly speaking, one of my kids maybe would like to do this, and so I was curious to see what the positions entailed and what they had available. And so I went online and actually went through this application process, expecting that I would just read a job description and have a place where you upload your resume or your CV, and that would be that. But no, it's like a total online assessment where they ask you a series of questions. You play a bunch of games where you're moving stuff around and sorting packages and things like this according to certain rules. And they use all of that to basically make their decision as to whether they're going to hire you or not, totally eliminating the human component and having the computer using its algorithms determine whether you would be a good candidate or not. And I stopped when it gave me shifts. Like, do you want to work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday from this time? Like, well, actually,
so you made it.
I guess I made it. But it's just to go with what you were saying is I didn't talk to anybody. It was right. It was just going through.
There's a
answering questions, watching a video, doing some online games. This gamification thing. It was right. It was quite different than anything that I'd expected.
Well, there's a company here in Utah, and I can't remember the name. I could actually play the video, and the sound would come through. We could put it on the video as well. But that's all that they do. It's called HireVue. I just remembered HireVue, VUE. And they're based here in Utah. And these are the companies like Amazon and Unilever that are using to do these online interviews. Now, you remember we've been talking about UPS and our experience when we were going to college, right? So my son got the job, and he's a loader. And they have this new huge state-of-the-art warehouse. Apparently, it's the 5th biggest in the world, and they are ready to expand if the demand is there, and they'll be the 2nd largest, I guess, outside of Louisville, Kentucky. But what he said is, you worked in the sort, is that correct?
I did.
Guess what does all the sorting today?
They must scan the packages and flip them to whatever trucks.
Everything is done by scanning. So they have unloaders and loaders, and everything else is done by AI, and it's all routed by machines and computers. So that's eliminated how many jobs for, I remember we had 50, 60 people on a shift that were sorters at least.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
So I wanted to share this audio with you. One of the things that deep learning has allowed is an Amazon Poly. You can look this up, Amazon Poly, and you can purchase this AI voiceover or these robots that can do all kinds of things for you. So this company AG Monitoring that I was talking about, the computer comes on and answers the phone and has actually been learning, right? They've entered like 10,000 scripts, and then they have been learning through responses of customers. And so the bot begins to learn and begins to respond differently. That's why it's going to take a couple of years for the machines to actually learn. So when there's an emergency, they can prioritize the calls. And here's why this is important. They monitor emergency calls like fire, burglar, health, right? If help, I've fallen, I can't get up, or heart attacks or stuff like that. And so life-threatening services. And they're supposed to answer these calls within 10 seconds. Well, they're averaging 30 seconds with outliers at 60 seconds. Can you imagine if you're in an emergency, you're being burglared and it takes you a minute? I mean, that's like an eternity. And it's causing them to lose customers. And so with this bot, they're actually able to answer the phones automatically between 1 and 3 seconds. And now what they want to do is they want to prioritize emergencies over low priority calls. And think of the millions of dollars that just that alone can save, right? When you get on Siri or Google, Alexa, it's almost like this, it's a robot, right? But the voice realism is improving like crazy. So I'm gonna play, and it should come through. You should hear it on your end, all right? I'm gonna play. This is Amazon Polly's AWS, basically robotic voice. See what you hear. Tell me, give me the thumbs up if you hear it.
Amazon Polly is a service that turns text into lifelike speech, allowing you to create applications that talk and build entirely new categories of speech-enabled products. In addition to standard TTS voices, Amazon Polly makes available neural text-to-speech and TTS voices, delivering groundbreaking improvements in speech quality through a new machine learning approach, thereby offering to customers the most natural and human-like text-to-speech voices on the market. Neural TTS technology also supports a newscaster reading style that is tailored to news narration use cases.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
So, I mean, what do you notice about that?
Well, it still sounds a bit artificial because part of that is it's using the voice that we've heard before with Amazon. Right. So you're familiar with the voice print. I will say I've actually used these artificial voiceovers on occasion for some things that I have done earlier this year. And it's awesome. Like you can just put a text in online. And for free, you do free samples of this. You can like copy and paste a text that you want read. You can choose from, 20 different male voices, 20 different female voices in American English, or if you want a British accent, you can do that, or an Australian accent, or whatever. Yeah. And it doesn't sound totally perfect. You can still kind of tell, but it's pretty amazing what can be done.
Well, think about it. I mean, you right now on our phones, if you pull up a news article and don't have time to read it when you're doing something else, you can actually have it read for you by AI. Think about vision impaired or blind people, just the benefits. And there's so many uses. Let me show you this picture right here. So this is the first 7-Eleven in China that is completely unmanned. No employees whatsoever. My son says, well, who cleans it? I'm sure they have to have somebody that comes in and cleans it, but eventually that'll be done by robots too. If you remember iRobots, all those robots cleaning off the freeway and stuff. Yep. But I imagine that will happen. But here is, in this country, we have these Amazon Go stores. I've been to one in San Francisco. And you go in the store, there's no checkout. You just have to have an app. So we'll eventually just walk into stores and we have the app. Anything that we pick up will be noted as we walk out of the store, will be charged. And so we're going to eliminate, in retail stores, we're going to eliminate salespeople and retail monitoring. And it will stop theft, right? You won't be able to buy or sell unless you have this app or chip or whatever that immediately charges your account. So these are some things that are happening right now to replace jobs. And there's so many more that we could talk about. And it's just fascinating that it's happening. And what we need is those skills. Like I said, the number one skill that companies are looking for is empathy. My son-in-law used to work for Bain. I think I've talked about that before, right? And he started his own firm. And
I'm still seeing your screen, by the way. Where are you?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, there you are.
Sorry. He started his own company with his brother, and they're doing fantastic. But he said that when they interviewed candidates for Bain, consulting or even the financial side, they had to have an immediate impact when they were hired. So of course they had to have the ability to do incredible analysis and understand the numbers. But more than that, they had to be able to get the trust of their clients immediately and not come in and say, this is what you need to do. Because at companies like McKinsey and Bain, when they do a good job, they do it with their client. They partner with the client and get them on board with the suggestions and the change. They don't do it for you or to you. And those take some very human skills, right? Of persuasion and empathy and understanding. And so he said empathy is about 2/3 of the process. And this is a very hard skill. There was a CEO in Germany that said that they implemented an empathy training program over 6 weeks and improved their customer service scores by 6%. She said, this is a hard skill that we have to have. And if you don't have it, you're going to struggle. And since I think it's been 1975 till about 2000, we've been keeping track of empathy among college students has been steadily declining. And we've seen a sharp increase in that decline since 2000 in college empathy, which is interesting, right? We have a whole society that wants to serve and care about people, we think, right? But empathy is actually decreasing. And why do you think that is, Christian?
I don't know, Spencer. As you were talking, I was thinking about, well, if it's a skill that's so essential, then maybe we need to rethink a little bit our curriculum in primary and secondary education so that we put more emphasis on these skills, because those are really not taught. We recognize how important STEM is,
That's right.
Science, technology, engineering, math. And so we emphasize that. And we do that because it drives test scores. And we know our competitors in other nations like Japan, for example, they're very heavily focused on annual exams and these tests. And so everybody's kind of geared up to test towards those things. But I don't remember taking an empathy class in elementary, junior high, or high school, or college for that matter.
So here's the reason, technology, we are so connected to our electronics that we're learning how to speak in short sentences and texts and tweets, and we're just losing our ability to really connect with each other because of our reliance a lot on technology. Our vocabulary is diminishing. Our ability to just connect with people one-on-one is hurting. You're right. I mean, STEM is really the strength of computers. So those are the skills that computers are replacing, right? It's the science and technology skills, but it's the human side that we need to learn, and the education system has to adapt to that we struggle with. Let me share with you what I believe empathy is really about. It's about responding appropriately to the situation, right? So if you're talking to a child, to a coworker, to a peer, to a boss, if you're talking to a police officer who's pulled you over, what's the appropriate response? If you're talking to a judge who is sentencing you, what's the appropriate response? If you are asking someone to marry you or to be your partner, what's the appropriate response? If you are responding to somebody who's attempting to kill you. So in a way, empathy is what allows the soldier or the fighter pilot to defeat their enemy. Why? Because they have enough respect for the opponent that they know them, that they understand them, they know their tactics, they respect them, and so that they can defeat them. In business, it's being able to understand our competitors. I mean, I was the CEO of a company, and one of the things I was striving to change in our culture was this idea that we had no competition, which was rubbish, because anybody who didn't use us was a competitor. Because sometimes we have such hubris that we're the best at what we do, and there's nobody that does anything like we do. Well, that's not true. But if you're empathetic, you understand that the marketplace is changing. Your customers may need you to change. The marketplace is demanding different responses from you, and therefore you learn how to respond appropriately. To me, that's a big part of what empathy is all about.
That totally makes sense. As you were talking about that there, Spencer, I was reminded of the Hippocratic Oath, which starts out right first, do no harm. And doctors, they practice that in terms of their medical practice and diagnoses and procedures, so on and so forth. They take great pains to not do harm. But do we do that in our communication? Sometimes we just talk and we don't give a lot of thought as to what the repercussions of our communication might be. So I like what you said a lot, which is we have to find the appropriate response.
I appreciate that. And I think that's one of the things that our guests that come on this show most appreciate about you is that you always ask these very thoughtful questions, which makes it very obvious that you are actually listening. And even though you have been trained in accounting, that's your background. I think one of the things that makes you so successful with your clients and with just people in general is your ability to connect and listen and relate, and your humility, I think, is something that is one of your great qualities that makes you such a successful person and leader.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, Spencer. I'll have to pay you after our podcast for that very kind compliment.
I mean that.
No, but I do appreciate that very, very much. For me, it just comes more from an intellectually curious point of view. I'm actually super interested.
That's a great approach, but that shows you care. You're responding appropriately because of that curiosity.
I feel every time we do one of these podcasts that I learn a ton of stuff from you. And so I've said it before, I just feel like I'm in a master class. You tell me these things and I just sit here and I'm like, yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Yep. Okay. Makes sense. That's great. So I appreciate you, Spencer, for being very knowledgeable and studious, and having enough care for your clients and your peers and your colleagues and your friends to actually do the hard work. Because I know that you study a lot, you work a lot of hours to keep educating yourself on things. And so for me as an intellectually curious person, this is like a dream come true, right? I get to talk to somebody who has a lot of knowledge and experience to share and can do it in a very effective way. I think that's another thing, as long as we're on the mutual admiration society track here, I think that's another thing that you do quite well is we talked about storytelling a few moments ago, and you know how to tell a good story. And I think part of that comes with doing it a lot. And
it's not natural, Christian.
And part of it comes from your ability to construct a narrative, and which makes it compelling, and you just want to keep listening. When someone can construct a narrative effectively, then it's really, really helpful. If they're very dry and boring, they seem super disorganized, they don't know what they're talking about, they can't really back up any assertions with any facts, then an intellectually curious person will lose interest. But that's not the case here. So thank you, Spencer, for doing all you're doing with all of your clients and all the experience that you're willing to share with me and with all of our listeners.
Thank you. Well, let me tell you one more story as we're wrapping up. So I was just talking to a CEO, I think it's been 2 weeks now, and she was part of one of the CEO groups I was presenting to, and I did a one-on-one session with her afterwards. And she told me that she's part of the Stanford executive program. And one of the skills that she was learning that was hardest for her was storytelling. So at the Stanford executive education program, they are teaching CEOs how to tell stories, because this is a skill that is critical for a leader to have, to be able to get people to buy in to their vision, to their strategies, to their ideas, the clients, the employees, everything. And so many CEOs struggle with this. And so learning these things, empathy, storytelling, communication, as you talked about, which we didn't really discuss today, and several other these human skills will help you to be more effective as a leader and actually give you a competitive advantage in the job market and your ability to succeed as you grow through your career.
It's so interesting to hear that you've got executives that are struggling with these, what you would think would be basic skills, right? But we don't learn these things in school. And so we have to learn them out here in the workforce. And you are in prime position to help people learn these skills, Spencer. So as we wrap up our podcast for this episode, if people want to talk to you, they want to learn more about how you can help them build empathy within themselves or in their organizations, develop communication and storytelling skills, what's the best way for them to reach out and contact you?
Thank you, Christian. You can email me at Spencer@altiumleadership.com. That's ALTIUM leadership.com. Visit our website at altiumleadership.com.
Fantastic,
What about
Spencer.
you, Christian? How
Oh,
can they
people,
find you?
you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook, although I don't do much there. But you can email me, cnapier, CNAPIER, at gp4.com, gpfour.com, or you can visit our website at gp4.com. Spencer, it's been a really fun, impromptu, improvisational podcast today. I really enjoyed it. Listeners, please like and subscribe to our podcast. We'll catch you again soon.